I first started learning Japanese in January of 2021, I think. And this was right at the, well, not the tail end. I suppose it was right still in the midst of the pandemic. So really, there wasn't much going on. A lot of us were home and didn't have much to do, like a lot of free time on my hands. Um, and so I was not in school at the time. I didn't have any college courses going on at the time because of the pandemic, and so I was just like, I have so much free time right now. Why don't I finally pursue my dream of learning another language? Because I had attempted before with German, but I had just never used it. I just never had any opportunities to use it. And so no matter how much I tried to like memorize vocabulary or grammar points or anything like that, it just went right out of my head like as soon after I learned it because I didn't have any reason to use it. There was nothing in German I really wanted to read, nothing in German I really wanted to watch. There was just not that much that was interesting to me in terms of content in the German language, and so it just never went anywhere. But I knew that I always wanted to be bilingual. Like for a long time, I knew I want to learn another language, but I just needed the correct fit for me. I needed something that was right for me. Something that I want. I have a reason to learn. Something I have a reason to learn. Um, and so with Japanese, there's a lot of stuff I'm interested in with Japanese. Japanese history, Japanese music, Japanese television, and just culture in general. There's there was much more of a motivation there to learn Japanese, and so I just set about. Um, I picked up some textbooks, and I was just like, we'll just start from the beginning, the basics. Um, and so, yeah, maybe some people criticize textbook learning as like, oh, well, you're really stilted. You learn textbook grammar, but not how it's actually spoken. But I knew that like eventually I'd be abandoning the textbooks. Um, that I just needed them to build a foundation. I needed that foundational grammar, the very basic stuff, just like how an adjective works, just things like that. And because if I just tried to go in and just start trying to read Japanese or listen to it, like just it's just going to go in one ear out the other because you need at least something to start. And so I started with those those textbooks, get the really basic stuff, the really stilted stuff, just so I get a basic understanding. And so I just read through those basic textbooks, did some of the practices in them, learned the grammar, learned the scripts, at least the two easy ones. There's three scripts in Japanese. One of them requires a lot of memorization. The other two you can learn in basically, a couple of days, which I did. Um, and so I learned those, got the basic grammar, and then I just started jumping into native material. I started I started watching anime without any English subtitles. I watched it with Japanese subtitles, in fact, and I started listening to podcasts. Um, Initially, podcasts that were made by native Japanese people for people learning Japanese. They spoke a little slower, but it was still native speech, but they spoke a little slower, and um, they didn't use any too complex words or grammar points. Like they'd still have some in there just for the opportunity for learning, but it was simpler stuff. But eventually, I did move on to more well, podcasts made for native Japanese speakers, made by natives for natives, and because of my job, I I was able to listen to stuff on my job. Um, music or podcasts or whatever, because it's just a typing job. I didn't have any. I wasn't moving around very much, just sitting in a chair typing. Didn't need to talk to anybody, so I just put in my headphones for the whole time I was at my job and listened to Japanese. At first you don't understand anything. Even with the basic grammar points, I'm just like, wow, this is all over my head. But just trying to pay attention and trying to actively find those things that I had learned while I was listening. Like, I'd hear a word that I learned before. I'm like, oh, I know that. I don't know what the heck they're saying, but I know that word. So I just pick up on things slowly like that, and like, 6 months later, I was in shock at like when I listen and really think back. I'm like, and I was actually starting to understand things. And I was like, wow, compared to like 6 months ago, I can't believe just listening and just trying to pay attention, not even really trying to translate everything, just paying attention and trying to just pick out words I know and things like that. I realized, wow, I'm comprehending so much now. And now, even like more than a year later, since I had started the January 2021, with all that intensive listening, now I've added in reading and things like that. Like I can't believe how far you can get in such a short time with a language. They always say that kids, oh, they learn languages so fast. It's just something in their brain. Like, it's amazing how they can learn languages so fast. But like they say, oh, adults can't learn as fast as a kid can with languages. But I honestly disagree, because yeah, look at me. You're almost a year and a half, coming up on a year and a half. And I'm pretty sure I speak Japanese better than like a 1.5-year-old. A Japanese, 1.5-year-old. I'm pretty sure I speak better Japanese than them, because I'm able to intuitively understand things and seek out things to learn myself. Whereas with children, they learn completely naturally, and that actually takes a while. Think like a 5-year-old. They can speak the language, but like it's still kind of broken and things like that. And that's 5 years. And in 5 years, I bet I could be almost completely fluent in 5 years if I keep up the same effort that I've been doing for the past year and a half. Learning the language in and of itself is just very rewarding. Like I was talking about earlier with how I looked back at myself after I'd hit the 6-month mark. I looked back, I was just, whenever I was listening at work now, and 6 months later, I was actually understanding things. And then I'd think back to month one, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe how much I'm understanding now. This used to just be complete gibberish, but now I'm actually understanding what's happening, what they're saying, at least what the topic is. I'd always now understand at least what the topic is. And just going from that point of zero, where it's just gibberish, to even just comprehending some stuff, like it's just like, wow, it actually is paying off. Like, week by week, it's hard to see the progress. Day by day, it's hard to see the progress. You don't see progress just within a day, day to day. But then when you look back months prior, and you have to like kind of force yourself to think back that far, and then you see, wow, I really have been coming far. And I started speaking with actual Japanese natives, like my sensei at my university. I can talk to her in Japanese, or the Japanese exchange students at my university. Actually, being able to talk with those people that like I normally couldn't really talk to before. I mean, my sensei, of course, she knew English, but the Japanese exchange students, they really don't know that much English, and so it almost feels like it's opening up a whole new world. Or like with reading, there's so many things on the internet that are only in Japanese, and like when you look at them, like it just feels like a gates opened, that you're able to access so much more stuff that you never would have been able to access before. I'm just getting my visa soon to travel to Japan, because right now Americans need a visa even for short-term stays because of the pandemic. But yeah, after I started learning Japanese, it was about 8 months, so August of 2021, when I decided, because I was going back to school now in August of 2021. I hadn't done the 2021 spring semester, but I was like, okay, fall semester, we're going back to get the ball rolling with school again. And so it was, yeah, that August where I was signing up for classes for fall semester. And so I signed up for Japanese, and I told, yeah, the head of the Japanese program there at Weber, I was like, I just want to do everything you've got. You know, minor, the Japanese minor, the certificate of proficiency, whatever that is, my associate's degree, you know, like I want to do everything that you can offer me for Japanese. And so I tested into the upper division courses just after 8 months. I just talked to my sensei, and I mean, it wasn't really even testing into the upper courses. I just talked to my sensei in Japanese, and you know, she asked me questions in Japanese just to kind of gauge my ability, and just from that, she decided. She said, "You should go into the upper division, Japanese 3000," and so that's what I started with. And then this has only been, I only just finished my second semester of Japanese, but I had 2 Japanese classes this past semester. And then being in those Japanese classes, I was made aware of the fact that there were study abroads to Japan that my university was offering specifically for language. So I was like, well, I might as well. I had been learning the language, you know, for about a year when I decided, and I was like, you know, I know enough, but like my speaking ability is still not great because I haven't been able to talk. I can comprehend really well. I can read things really well. I can listen to things pretty, yeah, like pretty well. I can understand, at least depending on how the speed of at which they're talking or the complexity of the topic. You know, I can generally understand, like especially day-to-day conversation. I can very much understand, but speaking, I just hadn't had enough opportunities to do it. And so I was like, well, I've never even been to Japan. I mean, that's just a cool place to go anyway. But also, it's an opportunity to practice my my Japanese speaking because I'll be surrounded by people who only speak Japanese for 2 months. It's the length of the study abroad that I'm going on is about 2 months, and so just being only around Japanese people and basically being forced, you know, by necessity to speak Japanese, like I think that will just improve my speaking ability by orders of magnitude. And so I was just like, yeah, like I'm young, I'm able to get off my job because it's technically academic. I was able to get the time off to go on it. I was like, this is once in a lifetime thing, especially for this price to go to Japan for 2 months. Like it's an insane deal, even just as a vacation even. And so I was just like, yeah, let's do it. I want to do more spontaneous stuff. You know, I want to get these experiences while I'm young and able to get them. Because yeah, I'm trying to focus more on getting experiences. And so yeah, I'm going to Kobe, which is near Osaka, kind of in central southern Japan. Going to Konan Daigaku, where I'll be studying, yeah, Japanese language.